Today I'm going to talk about something that is very near and dear to my heart, and it's the evolution of services to our investor population. I take a very personal approach, and I take great pride in making sure that we are always improving upon the industry norm, the industry standards, the barriers that investors face, and trying to execute with excellence and deliver on services, even if it means being creative and coming up with those on our own. So today we're going to walk through a fairly recent, I should say, extension of our services, and it's called the pre-purchase assessment. So let's get into it. Welcome to Growing Empires. I'm Jennifer DeJesus, real estate investor and operator. This show takes you behind the scenes of how real estate assets are executed, managed, and positioned for long-term performance. Let's get into it. So, what is a pre-purchase assessment and why does it matter? Well, over the years, and maybe throughout this podcast, you have heard me, if you know me well, talk about how one frustration led to the outcome of genuinely something wonderful. And the pre-purchase assessment is no different in that respect. I had watched over the years that I had been in business, investors counting on home inspectors to deliver information on properties to help them make the best decisions that they could make. I saw far too many examples where this inspection fell flat on its face. And it wasn't necessarily the inspector that was a problem. It was the standard in the industry. A home inspection is meant to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. But the home inspector is a master of nothing. They are an expert at nothing. And what is common practice is to have the inspector say something like, seek additional information. This looks like XXX. For example, this looks like a structural concern. Have a qualified structural engineer evaluate the property. Well, my question is, what did you just pay the home inspector for? Doesn't that defeat the purpose? A home inspector who is a master of nothing and just follows a set of guidelines cannot in any way, in my opinion, protect an investor from making the worst decision in his investment career as it relates to a building's condition, because they are going to just broad stroke everything, which is why they populate a 70 to 90 page report on most instances that does absolutely nothing to protect an investor. What it does is tell you a bunch of nonsense that doesn't matter. And for all the home inspectors out there that I represent or are colleagues of mine, I'm in no way stating that what you perform is not valuable to other people. What I'm saying very clearly is that for a real estate investor, it is not valuable. Because as a real estate investor, what I do not need to know is that that outlet had reverse polarity. I don't need to know necessarily how many outlets are grounded. What I need to know is that I've got knob and tube wiring in a building and where it is, and that's going to be an insurance claim or an insurance concern. It's going to render this building uninsurable, which is going to make my premiums increase if I can even get it insured. And it doesn't meet code today. So if I ever went to go do any kind of electrical work on the property, I would need to rerun all new electric to get rid of the knob and tube. And I don't even have a budget for that. Again, if we're talking about from a home inspector's purview, we're talking about this many outlets, some are grounded, some are not. From a contractor's perspective and an investor's perspective, this is what I need to budget for. This is when I need to budget for. These are the risks that are associated with this type of purchase. And this is all that you need to know. What was born out of all of this, and this overall frustration, watching investors make decisions on properties, believing that they had the authoritative figure, the inspector, to protect their investment decisions, and watching them in some cases have these instances where something crept up out of the blue that they were not aware of shortly after the acquisition was made, I realized that I had a duty to these investors and to you to provide another option and to come up with a solution. I've frequently heard investors say, well, why didn't the home inspector find that? Well, why didn't the home inspector find that? And my answer is always the same. The inspector is not a master of anything. They are an information gatherer. They are somebody to say what is in the home inspection book of what is typical and customary. They're what is the standard of operating procedure for home inspectors. But they certainly don't come with any kind of extreme technical ability or experience that you would get from an expert in the craft, which is why they refer you to those experts in the craft. Well, Empire Property Management and Empire Property Construction has made it our mission to make sure that we have the best of the best employees and experts in their fields in every respected division. I certainly am not an expert in construction, and I probably know enough to be dangerous. However, what I am very good at is hiring experts, people that their knowledge is far superior to mine so that we can elevate together the knowledge of our investors and the people that we represent. What was born out of this, and it took about a year for us to produce it, is something called a pre-purchase assessment. And today we still only offer this service to our exclusive database of clients. We do plan to offer this service as a service to investors, but we've kept it very close to home to our exclusive client base of real estate investors because we wanted to, perfect it, make sure that it addressed every need and every concern. We wanted to weather some storms and almost in some respects go full cycle with it, as we talk about with some deals. We wanted to make sure that we were providing the level of detail that would be expected from our service renderings. So what is a pre-purchase assessment? A pre-purchase assessment is not a home inspection. It is not done by a home inspector. It is done by a contractor that has multiple specialty licenses like plumbing licenses, HVAC licenses, environmental certifications, is a master of code enforcement and code knowledge, is a master of the electrical and the plumbing trades, and all of the things that you would need to know to make sure that you are making the best informed decisions. Why do we do this? We do this to make sure our investors are advised and can make good decisions. So what do you need to know as an investor buying a property? You need to know, how long is that roof going to last? How long is the heating system going to last? When do I need to budget for replacement of water heaters? What kind of structural concerns do I need to be aware of? And what's the cost of those structural concerns? I want you to think past just the inspection. I want you to think about the next phase, which is your negotiations. How do you negotiate with another seller when you got a 90-page report from a home inspector with a bunch of words on paper? You have no factual information. You have no budgets. You have no life expectancy. What you have is a bunch of words on paper that don't translate to negotiable items. What do you get from a pre-purchase assessment? Well, you get room-by-room dimensions. You get a sewer line scope to make sure that you can see what's happening with the sewer lines. You get drone footage of the roof to see the condition of the roofs. By the way, home inspectors no longer climb on roofs. Why do you think that is? Insurance. So how do you get knowledge of the roof? The home inspector is going to tell you to go find a roofer. We are going to get you drone footage and expertise looking at that drone footage to tell you the condition of the roof. You also are going to get an outline of code violations, budgetary numbers, CapEx numbers, safety and compliance, all the things that you would need to know for your insurability, through your budgeting, your negotiations, and your long-term hold strategy. And we will tailor that specific to what you say your investment goals are. So if you say that your investment goals are, I plan to hold this property for 5 years and then sell it, we are going to give you a pre-purchase assessment with information and knowledge based on that 5-year hold period so you can make the most educated, most informed decisions about your investments as you're trying to strategize and budget for future improvements. If you say this is a long-term plan, a 10 or 20-year hold, we'll give you a pre-purchase assessment for that. The whole point is that we are strategizing on behalf of the investor to not only give you the information that you need at your fingertips for appropriate negotiations, but we are giving you budgetary numbers for you to put into your investment calculations to make the most informed decision prior to you purchasing a property. If a property is going to go sideways, a lot of times it goes sideways not because the property itself was bad, but because the investment analysis never included the CapEx or the long-term what-ifs that can happen in a property. We try to uncover those what-ifs for you prior to your investment purchase so that you can make more informed, strategic decisions and less reactive decisions. We all have had experiences, and I'm sure you have too, where you've been forced in a position where you had to make a reactive decision to something that happened at one of your properties. And that decision always comes with a premium price. We're talking about the water heater that goes out or the heating system that goes out in the dead of winter at below freezing temperatures, where the next piece of that is going to be frozen pipes and very unhappy tenants. We help you get in front of these things. We call them predictive maintenance. We call it preventative maintenance. So our pre-purchase assessment is going to help you make those informed decisions in advance of those issues so that you're not calling for emergency services and you're not faced with things that are going to force you to make a decision out of necessity versus out of sheer planning and due diligence. So let me show you what I'm very proud to report as our pre-purchase assessment. An example of a pre-purchase assessment when it's in its completed form. We will outline what the property is, give you all the information on the assessment date, who ran the inspection, and then how many units, the occupancy, landlord, utilities. Next page is a table of contents. It gives you a quick snapshot if you want to just run to a certain section. If you are mostly concerned about mechanicals, don't want to read the whole thing, you can go to section 5 and find that information. The next part is about the assessment scope and the methodology. And this really just relates to what does the scope include, what was not included so that you're really informed. It talks about interior unit condition, room by room observations with square footage, mechanical systems, an overview of all of that, the exterior of the property, life and safety, as well as rental code compliance, basement structural, grounds and parking, sewer scope, which is something we complete on site. As soon as I run through this pre-purchase assessment, I'm also going to share with you something that we uncovered from one of these sewer scopes that otherwise would never have been known by the investor prior to the purchase. What's not included? Licensed structural engineering evaluation. Phase 1, environmental, radon, mold, lead-based paint testing, none of that would be included unless, of course, you wanted those additional services. So property overview gives you a breakdown of what the property is. Why is this important and why should you pay attention to this? Not everything is what it seems on paper. So I urge you that after you go through your initial negotiations and get under contract on a property, that you use this property overview to compare what you think you're buying, especially if you are not actually visiting the property during any time of your due diligence. This says how many meters are on the property, how many gas meters, water heaters, what type of heat there is, what type of hot water there is, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, and what the unit mix is. You'll want to just compare this to your original notes on your investment analysis to make sure that these things align. Now we're going to go by unit condition. This particular unit is unit 1. It's a first floor, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. What type of heat does it have? What kind of hot water does it have? And whether or not it's occupied. Then you're going to go room by room condition, and it tells you the condition, the type of flooring, the type of ceiling, and what the walls are. It gives you the total square footage and then condition notes. Everything that you need to know about the condition of that specific unit. Couple of additional things to note here would be rehab scope at next vacancy. We're going to point out for you the things that would need to be done the next time the unit turns over. That is critical because in a fully occupied building, although that doesn't matter today, it will matter in the future. And you don't necessarily know if that vacancy is tomorrow, next month, 6 months from now, or 6 years from now. It's important that you know what would be required on the next occupancy. or the next vacancy. So many people look at pictures and misjudge things based on those pictures. So we're giving you the full scope of what we believe to be done so that you can budget for it appropriately. Notice here marked in red, there's a section that says smoke and CR alarms are not present in all required areas. That is a fire life safety issue. And although I don't necessarily recommend that you ask a seller to put in smoke detectors, it's something that you'll want to do as soon as you own the property. Unit 2, 2-bedroom, 1-bath. Where is it located? What do you need to know about the heating, the hot water, whether or not it's occupied, your room-by-room condition, and square footage. Then again, kind of your condition notes, what to expect on the rehab or the vacancy, the next vacancy, your notes about smoke alarms, also some additional notes. Notice things are color-coded here. Green means it's in great condition. It's exactly what you expect. Yellow means it's a warning sign, and red just means it is completely out of compliance and something that you should note during your ownership. In this particular case, this one had a workshop and a garage, so we added those additional notes here, the garage and the additional notes. And here's where we get into the important and mostly costly items, which is your roof, your foundation, your siding, and your envelope, your exterior envelope, your porches, your steps, your sidewalks. So many times there's not enough focus put on the exterior of a building. We worry about what it looks like where the tenant lives and what condition the units are in, but we fail to realize that the exterior of the building is the single most expensive area of the building, and the things that you need to be wary of when it comes to siding, exteriors, foundations, the life expectancy on these things, because not everything lasts forever. You'll notice that these are color-coded. We're giving this inspector some information here. There's some water issues in the building. It needs some brick pointing. These ones marked in yellow are really about us saying these are the things that you need to be aware of and that you need to be budgeting for. The things that are in red are saying these things must be fixed immediately. They're either going to cause you unnecessary risk like trip hazards and unnecessary future damage, but it's also things that could affect your insurability. We'll also talk about the grounds and the landscaping because those are the things that should be in your notes or your underwriting. We talk about the mechanical systems and we break everything down, your electric meters, your panels, your heat and your HVAC, your hot water, your gas or oil-fired appliances, anything that you need to know regarding these systems here. Plumbing supplies, sewer and drain lines, and the list goes on. Basement and structural, the things that you need to know there. Okay, so just a very full detailed report inside and outside of what you're actually purchasing. Life and safety compliance. These are the things that are in compliance with fire, life and safety ordinances and things that you need to be aware of. Property and priority findings and risks associated with each of the levels of consideration. These are the ones that you need to address immediately. Address within 90 days, budget to do within 1 to 2 years. This here is a strategic opportunity. We found a way on this particular property to increase the overall income by utilizing a unused portion of the building into a cash flowing asset part of the building. We put that recommendation in here as well. Your rehabilitation budget summary. This is where I really feel like the rubber meets the road for investors. We are giving you budgets based on expertise. These are not hypothetical estimates. These are not smoke and mirrors. This is done with extensive construction knowledge and extensive history on budgeting for investors for these types of things. And it's sharing with you exactly not only what the cost is going to be, but when you can expect to have that as a cost in your investment ownership. These are the immediate year one priorities, and then we give you a total. We'll then give you a photo log of everything that we took photos of, and then we'll give you an overall assessment of the property and what we thought of it. I hope you thought that that was valuable. What I wanted to make sure that you understood is the value of something as such. Now, I'm certainly by no means suggesting that everybody should use this service. As I mentioned before, we only have offered this service to our exclusive client base of investors because we want to make sure that you are well protected and make really great decisions. But let me end with one really quick story about where this assessment really turned out to be a good predictive and preventative option for an investor. We were assessing a 7 or 8 unit building. We do a sewer line scope as a part of our assessment. Now, home inspectors cannot do any kind of invasive inspections, and a sewer line scope is considered somewhat of an invasive inspection, and it requires a certain level of expertise in plumbing and knowledge, and also certifications to run the equipment for the sewer line scopes. We ran this sewer line scope as we would do for every property. And interestingly enough, the seller was selling this building, talking about the tens of thousands of dollars that he had just spent on plumbing work in the building. And it was specific to the sewer line. He had just had an entire new sewer line ran from the building to the street to the connection, and he spent $20,000 or $25,000 to do the work. He provided us with proof and invoices of the work and everything to believe that we shouldn't even have to look at it. But because my team is a bunch of very diligent, and I should say untrusting as it relates to what somebody tells us, we trust but verify, right, is kind of our general rule of thumb. We trust but verify. So in this particular instance, again, we followed our course of action, which is trust but verify. And we expected that we would see what the seller told us we would see, as well as what we had proven on invoices and receipts, that they use a reputable company with permits to install a sewer line from the house to the street, and it was going to be in perfect condition. We were shocked to find that, unfortunately, that was not the case. That plumbing company, who will remain nameless because I'm sure it wasn't just an error, actually forgot to add a fitting. The main sewer line underground was disconnected about an entire foot. So if you think about that, where was that sewage going every time somebody in that 7 or 8 unit building was flushing the toilet? Every time water was being run. Now, that sewer line had only been replaced 4 months prior to us going under contract and doing the assessment. But for 4 months, all sewage was going into the ground. So not only did the sewer line that somebody paid $20,000 or $25,000 to replace have structural failure, but we also have a potential sinkhole forming because now we have excessive water below grade and very close to the foundation. Thankfully, we were able to, upon sewer scope, provide this information to the seller, who was able to take it back to his respective vendor that did the work. They, of course, fixed it for free, and both the seller and the buyer were able to win in this particular situation. But imagine how bad this would have been. Think about every property you've ever purchased that you didn't have a sewer scope. What type of risk are you willing to take with your next investment property? If you've ever had to replace a sewer line, you know that they frequently are over $20,000, and I've seen some as high as $50,000. What level of risk are you willing to take? And if you have a $20,000 bill at one instance, does that tank your returns? And if so, for how long? Depending on the size of the property, that may be indefinite. I hope you can appreciate the value in why we do what we do, and why always trying to execute with excellence and find a solution to the industry's kind of standards or norms that maybe no longer work appropriately for investors is something that I take so serious and take to heart. And I'm very proud to be the one with the resources, or the one with the ideas to come up with those solutions for investors that help protect their investments. If this does nothing but help you assess a property better the next time around, I assure you that the one thing you'll want to add to your investigation is going to be a sewer line scope on every future building that you purchase. And if for some reason you're not using Empire Property Construction to do the pre-purchase assessments, you can definitely hire a licensed plumber to do a sewer line scope. Those typically will run you about $200 to $500, depending on the area that you're in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and until next time, take care. That's it for now. If passive income from real estate investments plays a role in your long-term investment strategy, this show is for you. Thanks for listening. And for more in-depth resources, please head over to growingempires.com.